Hey everybody, and welcome back to my top 100 board games of all time. This is the 2022 to 2023 edition, and in this particular episode I'll be counting down from number 90 to number 81. And I have to say, at a quick glance, this might be the most eclectic list in terms of the games featured. But before I get started on the games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer here in the UK. And if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. At number 90, I have Caesar Seize Rome in 20 minutes. Now, this is brand new to the list because it only came out this year, and this is a two-player head-to-head area majority style game, and normally that mechanism doesn't lend itself too well with only two players, but for some reason Caesar manages to pull it off. And I suppose this game is quite abstract in its nature, as you are placing these tokens on the borders of these regions. But all these tokens are divided in half, meaning that if you're going to put high numbers in one region, it will probably mean you're putting low numbers in the adjacent region, and so on. So you're going to be quite careful about how you allocate these tokens, which ones you're going for, and which ones you're willing to forsake. It's basically a race to deploy all your influence markers on the board, but you've got to be quite careful with the opportunities you leave to other players, because if they seal off those regions, whether they win it or not, they can gain access to these powerful tokens which can be used against you. I think Paolo Mori's done a great job of carving out this little niche where he creates quite abstract games where normally there'll be a ton of options to go down, but he manages to kind of funnel that down into a few very simple decisions, because at any time in this game you only have like 2 or 3 tokens to deploy. So, you know, even if there's an optimal play there, you might not have the right token to go with it. Now, some people might find that frustrating, but personally I think it keeps the game on the rails and it keeps it ticking along. And I think this game has pulled, again, a 2-player area control style game off. Very high stakes. It feels tense from start to finish, and it's just brilliantly executed. So that is Caesar Seize Rome in 20 minutes at number 90. At number 89, I have Scout, which is another new entry to the list. Now, this is a small box, ladder climbing, shedding style game with a few very clever twists on this one, because when you have your hand of cards and when you acquire new cards, you cannot reorganize your hand, so they have to stay in this exact order. Now, what you're trying to do is that you're trying to put on these displays or these performances by playing better hands, I suppose. So you can play runs, or you can play a bunch of the same numbers, just bearing in mind that you want to keep on trumping the person before you. Now, if you don't perform, you can end up taking cards from the stack and slotting them in where you want into your hand with the idea of trying to trump it later. But you can't wait too long, because if you don't beat a performance by the time it gets back to that starting player, then they're going to automatically win the round, and everybody else is going to lose points based on the cards they have in their hand, because you want to get rid of those cards as quickly as you can. This is one of those games I think you need to try to understand how it works, but it's one of those games, again, I've said this a few times on the list already, it feels like this is a classic. It feels like I'll be playing this in 5 or 10 years time, because it's just so true to what the type of game is. It makes you feel clever. Again, I love that hand management system. It's not used very often, and I think it just works fantastically here. So yeah, this game really did blow up this last year or two, and rightly so, because I was very impressed, even on top of all that hype. So that is Scout at number 89. At number 88, I have Nova Luna, which is a pretty straightforward little tile placement puzzle style game by Uwe Rosenberg. So this is actually the only Uwe Rosenberg game I have on my entire top 100, because his games generally don't gel with me very well, but for some reason this game was just a home run. I thought this game is fantastic. It uses the time track system that has been used in his previous games, such as Patchwork, where depending on the tile you want to draft is going to have a number of time assigned to it, which means you're going to move your player piece around this rondelle, and until the other players catch up with you, you're not going to get another turn. So you need to kind of weigh that up. You know, how long am I willing to forsake taking another turn to get the exact tile I want? And when you're placing these tiles, you're trying to map them out, trying to connect colours with other colours, trying to trace routes through colours, all the idea of trying to get those tiles completed and shed all these discs that you start with. So this does have a very tight race aspect to it. I think it's very clean and very family friendly, and it's just clever. I think this game is brilliantly executed. That is Nova Luna at number 88. At number 87, I have Ohanami. So this is a small box card game. It's a closed drafting style game and a set collection style game that was ranked at number 69 last year. So it has fallen slightly, but it's not because I like it any less. It's just one of those things where it naturally gets pushed down. But for me, this is like the definition, the textbook definition of a hidden gem, and it kind of ticks a lot of boxes that could have been something like a Spiel des Jahres winner. That's how much I think of this one. So this is a closed drafting set collection style game, as every round you're going to get given a hand of cards, and you're going to be placing these cards in front of you, or after drafting 2, you're placing them in front of you to create 3 columns of cards. Now these cards are going to come in 4 different types, which score in different ways. So for example, you've got these blue cards that score you 3 points per card you play, but they score in every single round. You've got the green cards that score you 4 points each time you play them, but they only score for the second and third round. So they score more, but they score less frequently. And the same applies to these grey cards, which score a massive 7 points, but they only score once. On top of that, you have these pink cards that can score you based on a sliding scale. The more, the merrier. But the twist on this game is that every single card in the deck has a unique number assigned to it. And when you play them in these columns, you need to play them higher than the highest card or lower than the lowest card, which means that if you start creating gaps in those cards, your options are going to get squeezed and you're going to be more and more restricted, potentially resulting in you not being able to play anything and forsaking those points. Just a genius design. It's one of those games I'll never refuse. It's just so much fun, tense, and I just love that constant strangulation of getting tighter and tighter as the game goes on and hoping you can scrape through without losing any points. Brilliant game. Check this one out. I highly recommend it. That is Ohanami at number 87. At number 86, I have Mexica. So Mexica has actually been in my top 100 for 5 years now. So it's really been a mainstay. However, this is the lowest placement it's ever placed at 86. Last year it was at number 58, but it has placed as high as number 13. Still, I kind of go through peaks and valleys with this game because it is very abstract in its nature. It feels like a true abstract strategy game, but it's an area majority style game. And the cool thing about this game is that you actually carve up the areas as the game goes on by placing these rivers on the board. Again, the bigger the areas, they're going to be worth more points, but of course there's going to be more competition there when it comes to establishing these temples in these regions. Whoever's got the most powerful influence in the temples of each region is going to get more points than the people with less influence there. But I love the fact that you actually have to traverse around the board by moving your player piece, by sailing up and down the rivers and things like that, even teleporting if you want to forsake your whole turn. But yeah, that kind of dual aspect of having a physical pawn on the board as well as kind of competing in the area control. I think this game is insanely clever. Again, I do have to kind of be in the right mood for it. It can be quite nasty at times as you block people off, but still, no fault with the game at all. It's so brilliantly designed. That is Mexica at number 86. At number 85, I have another debut entry with Rumble Nation. And for me, this is another textbook example of a hidden gem. So Rumble Nation is a straightforward area majority style game that uses dice as its main function. And all you're doing is you're trying to compete for dominance in each of these 12 regions, and you're going to do that by rolling 3 dice. Now, when you roll these 3 dice, you're going to take a pair of them, keep them together, and you're going to have one in isolation. Now, the pair is going to show which region you're going to deploy your troops into, because again, if you rolled a 7, you're going to deploy into region 7. Now, the dice remaining on its own, it's going to show how many troops go into that region. So if you roll a 1 or a 2, it's going to be 1 troop, 3 and a 4, 2 troops, and a 5 and a 6 is going to be 3 troops. And you're going to do this until all of the cubes have been distributed on the board amongst all the players. And then you're going to go through the resolution phase, which is a hell of a lot of fun, because when you start resolving these lower regions, because you're going to start from lowest going to highest, not only is the victor going to get the points based on the strength of that region, so the lower ones aren't going to be worth as many points, but it does mean that if you win at those lower regions, you are going to expand by splitting more influence out in all the adjacent regions where you have some coverage. So what that means is that, yeah, lower regions aren't going to be so great in terms of points, but they can really bolster your higher regions the way you're competing for. And that can be a massive cascading effect as you get these wild swings of dominance as the game progresses. And it's just a joy to behold, just to see how this game develops. You've got a good degree of foreplanning here, considering that, I need to win this region so that I'll then win this region, which will then help me win this region, and so on. And it's just brilliant. It's so clever, so genius, really. And I've never seen a game use this mechanism. And again, this is another game that I can see being a colossal hit if only more people knew about it and it was more widely accessible. So that is Rumble Nation at number 85. At number 84, I have High Society. This is a game that's been on this list for a long time. You know, it's 5 years in my top 100. Last year it placed at number 56, but it has placed as high as number 18. So I tend to love Reiner Knizia bidding games. This one is definitely the smallest footprint one, as all you're doing is that each player is going to have a hand of cards, which shows all the different money denominations they have. And then as the turn structure goes on, you're just going to be revealing these cards which you're bidding for to get you victory points. But also you are bidding not to take these negative cards, which can score you negative points, or they can force you to discard other cards, half your points, all these kind of things. But another game I talked about on the last list was QE, where it had this mechanism where if you end up being the person who spent the most money, then you're automatically disqualified from winning. And that is the exact same mechanism that was taken from High Society. It just puts a great twist on the game where you want to hold back a little bit and spend just a little bit below the person who spent the most to give you the best shot of winning. I also love the twist that you can never get any change with this game. So if you only got, say, 8,000 money left in your hand and you want this pretty poor card, then you're going to have to spend every single penny to do so. So you can't get any change and get money back in your hand in return. Brilliant design, you know, very streamlined, and it's just, yeah, been a mainstay on the list for 5 years now, and I don't really see it ever falling off my top 100. So that is High Society at number 84. At number 83, I have Orléans. So this was actually placed at number 32 last year. It's been on my top 100 for 5 years now, placing as high as number 9, I believe, during its debut year. So this has been a game I've truly loved over the years. Now, it has fallen a bit. I think that is because I'm so familiar with this game now that I think I'm always going to approach it in the same way. So I don't really feel like there's much more for me to discover. Now, I'm not downplaying it at all in that way because, you know, it's still in my top 100. But it's probably not going to be as requested as often as I did. I love this key mechanism of building a bag of tokens and then drawing those tokens out at random and then using them to activate actions, such as moving around this map, deploying these trade houses, climbing up this multiplier bar, giving yourself better tokens to, you know, increase your ability to draw more tokens from your bag or get resources. Just tons you can do here, very Euro in its nature. And I love how simple the turn structure is because there's actually not that much of a framework or many phases to keep things stalling. It always does move along at a good pace. It's actually a good example of a game that uses event tiles because normally I don't like the swinginess of events, but this game seems to do it to a really high standard. And yeah, just, you know, it's a brilliant game. Yeah, only fallen because of my over familiarity to it. So that is Orléans at number 83. At number 82, I have 7 Wonders Duel. This is only the second year it's been on this list, ranking as high as number 62 last year. So it has fallen slightly, but again, for no negative reason. It's just the way the cards have been shuffled. But this is it's an open drafting style game where you are building up this pyramid of cards, but you can only ever draft from the extremities of that pyramid, meaning that if I take a card, it will reveal a card beneath it for my opponent. And you have to be very careful about how you use that because you are competing in a bunch of different fields. Like, you want to be, of course, collecting as many victory points as you can, but you need to be building an infrastructure of the resources in the first place to help you buy the better cards. You are competing from a military standpoint by using this push and pull tug of war mechanism, which can not only be an instant win if you push it far enough, but it'll also financially cripple your opponent as you do so. And you can also go for a scientific approach by trying to collect all these different symbols and, again, winning instantly. So I love the way you have to spin a lot of plates and not give your opponent opportunities to use against you. So yeah, not only are you helping yourself, you're also keeping an eye on your opponent. I love that drafting system, probably the best example of how to do drafting at 2 players. I love the way there's a lot of mechanisms used here, but in a very cohesive unit. And it's just, yeah, one of the best 2-player games ever. That is 7 Wonders Duel at number 82. And finally, at number 81, I have Miyabi by Michael Kiesling. So this was actually ranked at number 55 last year. So fallen a bit. I haven't played it as much this year as I did last year, but I did play it semi-recently and it really did remind me about how great this tile placement game is. Certainly on the family-friendly side of the spectrum, as you're drafting these different shaped tiles, placing them on your player board. Now, somewhere on this tile, there's going to be a symbol on it. And as soon as you place that symbol in a column, you are no longer allowed to place anything else in that column for the remainder of the round. And not only are you trying to work around that puzzle, you can also start laying tiles on top of other tiles to increase your multipliers. I love how this game gives you the option to tailor how heavy or complex you want it to be. You can play a very simple version, or you can start adding in these, very simple modules, but those simple modules start to add up on each other and start to make you conflict with what you're doing. Like, for example, you want to get majorities in the rows. You want to, of course, get the instant grabs of points when you place the tiles. You want to get your biggest cluster of items scoring, even the empty space ones you can score, and so on. So yeah, loads of different fronts you're competing on here. Takes about 45 minutes to play, if that. Very accessible but thinky, and just a great little puzzle game that should be a massive hit. So that is Miyabi at number 81. So there we have it, that's the second installment of these games completed. Again, hopefully there's something here that has captured your attention, and please do let me know what you think of these selections. Now, if you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel if you've not already done so. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye-bye.